Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload. I married Claire in a white-steepled church that had seen 3 generations of our town trade vows and casseroles. We rented a second-floor walk-up over a hardware store that smelled like lumber and coffee from the diner next door. I loved the slow rhythm of it. Porch lights winking on at dusk, the freight train sliding past the river. Sunday mornings when the town gathered at the farmer's market and argued about college football with the same good-natured heat they used for weather. After years of restless travel for jobs that never stuck, I wanted stability. Claire was that to me, steady, practical, a person who ironed her shirts and kept promises. Our first month as husband and wife felt like a clumsy duet that kept finding its beat. We learned each other's kitchen habits. I discovered she salted pasta water with a seriousness I reserved for tax season. She learned my bad habit of leaving measuring tape on every flat surface. We spent Friday nights at Lou's Diner, sharing a slice of cherry pie that leaked syrup onto the plate, then drove home with the windows cracked to listen to cicadas buzz like faulty streetlights. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt real. One night, while folding towels warm from the dryer, she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and cleared her throat. "I can't be close yet," she said, eyes on the neat stacks. "You'll need to wait." Her words landed carefully, as if she'd rehearsed them, smoothing the edges so they didn't cut. I nodded. People bring their own histories into a marriage. Timing matters. Comfort takes time. I told her I understood, because I wanted to. I wanted to be the kind of man who doesn't push when patience would mean more. We built a routine around that promise. Movie nights on the couch, long walks along the river trail after dinner. Saturday mornings fixing up the apartment, paint on my wrists, radio humming oldies. There were moments I felt a flicker of uncertainty, little blips that passed almost before they formed. Claire started visiting her parents in Maple Grove every other weekend, always with tasks to help them, sorting boxes in the attic, setting up a new router, taking her mom to appointments. Sometimes she left on a weeknight too, saying her dad needed help with paperwork. Frank and Linda Hart were kind people who grilled burgers for Firehouse fundraiser picnics and waved at everyone from their porch. I thought it was good that Claire stayed involved with them. Family matters. It was a Wednesday when the story changed. I'd returned late from the job site, a public works project replacing a pedestrian bridge. My clothes carried that metallic tang of rebar and rain. Claire beat me home by a half hour and jumped in the shower. I went hunting for my phone charger in her canvas tote because mine had disappeared behind some stack of blueprints. The bag held the usual: planner, lotion, a paperback with a cracked spine, receipts folded into triangles. My hand hit plastic. I pulled out a slim white stick in a wrapper, then felt the dull thud of understanding before my brain caught up. The wrapper had a corner ripped open. The tiny window showed 2 lines, as stark as road paint. I stood still, listening to the rush of the shower, and told myself every alternate explanation possible. Maybe she bought it for a friend. Maybe the test was old. Maybe I was misreading. The second line wasn't faint. It was definite, a bright yes in a world where we'd agreed on wait. Water clicked off. My heart slammed. Part fear, part anger at the math that didn't add up, part shame that my first instinct was suspicion when I had promised trust. I slipped the test back into the bag exactly how I'd found it, then moved to the kitchen to pour water I wouldn't drink. Claire came out in a robe, cheeks pink from steam, humming along to a jingle stuck in her head. She kissed my temple and asked if I wanted leftover meatloaf. I told her I wasn't hungry and asked about her day. She said something about a spreadsheet that wouldn't print and that she might stop by Maple Grove on Friday because her mother had asked for help reinstalling a software update. My yes felt heavy. I've always been a planner. Bridges don't hold because you hope they will. They hold because you check every load, every bolt. That night, lying awake under a ceiling fan that ticked like a lazy metronome, I built a plan. I would not accuse her and watch our marriage shatter in a shouting match. I would not pretend I hadn't seen what I'd seen either. The truth had to come out somewhere with witnesses who loved her and wouldn't let either of us twist it. My mind kept returning to her parents, the people who knew her longest, who understood her better than anyone besides maybe her best friend Jenna. If this was a mistake, they would help us correct it. If it wasn't, they would help us face it. That's what I told myself. Underneath, I think I wanted shelter from the moment I said the ugliest words out loud. The next morning before work, I drove to Maple Grove. The Hart House sat on a quiet cul-de-sac where wind chimes rang whenever a truck barreled past the intersection. I stood on the porch with a plain envelope in my hand, the test wrapped inside with a sticky note I had written in neat block letters. Found this in Claire's bag. I don't know what it means. Please talk to her. I wasn't trying to burn the house down, I was lighting a porch light. At least that's what I told myself as I slid the envelope under the doorframe and drove away with my stomach in my throat. If guilt is a sound, it's the hum of tires on an empty highway. I listened to it all day while reviewing soil reports and answering emails that didn't matter. Claire texted at lunch. Love you. You okay? I stared at the screen too long and answered with a thumbs up and, after a minute, a heart. I could have called, I didn't. Courage and cowardice sometimes wear the same jacket. From a distance you can't tell them apart. She told me she'd stay in Maple Grove through Saturday to help her parents with the router and some yard work. I said I'd catch up on paperwork and finally fix the squeaky hinge in our pantry. I said these things because they belonged to a normal life, and I wanted normal to hold a little longer. Friday evening, I walked to the river to clear my head. Families ate at picnic tables, kids tossed bread to ducks, the local marching band practiced a medley that stumbled into shape by the second run. Across the water, the sunset turned the grain silo into a bronze pillar. I tried to remember our vows. Better words than the ones I'd chosen recently. Patience, kindness, honesty. The water moved on without my help. Saturday. My doorbell rang so hard it felt like it might detach from the wall. I opened it to see Jenna on the stoop, hair in a messy bun, face flushed from either the heat or a long argument, or both. She blew past me into the living room and spun on her heels. "Do you even know what you did?" she said, not screaming like in a soap opera, but with the kind of force that knocks the air out of a room. I'd never seen Jenna angry. She was the friend who brought dessert and playlists, the one who cheered at 5Ks even when she hadn't signed up. Today, that cheerfulness had burned off like fog. "Jenna," I began, raising my hands. No, she said. "You listen first." She paced a tight line across the rug, then pointed toward my chest. "Claire was going to tell you Monday she had an appointment to confirm things. She was scared, yes, but ready. Instead, her parents found your envelope. Everything exploded. Her mom cried, her dad started calling lawyers, and Claire froze. You took away her chance to tell the truth on her own feet." I sank onto the couch. The house smelled faintly of sawdust from the pantry repair I'd actually finished, a detail that suddenly felt obscene. If I'd confronted her alone, I said, maybe she would have told me a story designed to keep me calm. I wanted facts. "Facts," Jenna said. "You want a fact? You hurt her. She's not perfect. She made bad choices before the wedding and thought the past was over. But she was working up to honesty, and you cut the wire before the fireworks spelled it out." My breath felt thin. "So it's true," I said. The words settled on the coffee table between us. Jenna didn't answer that question directly. "There's more you don't know, and it's not mine to share with details. But this isn't what you think. Not exactly. Nothing neat, nothing clean." She rubbed her forehead, then looked at me with something like pity. "She needs you at Maple Grove. Not to judge. To stand up and say you're in this with her. If you still are." My throat tightened. Anger had been easier than this, easier than grief or care. Yet beneath everything, a solid thing remained. I married Claire because I believed she was my person. People mess up. Lives turn. Promises get tested. What mattered was what we did next. I grabbed my keys. "Let's go," I said. Jenna exhaled like she'd been waiting for an answer since sunrise. On the drive, the town rolled past in familiar landmarks. The water tower with the chipped paint, the high school track where I used to jog laps at dusk, the billboard promising a better mattress and, by implication, better dreams. I realized I had spent a week building a case when I should have been building a bridge. We turned onto the Hart Street just as porch lights began to flicker on. Frank's pickup sat in the driveway, hood speckled with dust. A neighbor watered petunias, pretending not to watch. I swallowed and thought of how every choice carries a ripple. Mine had spread farther than I meant. Jenna parked at the curb and put a hand on my shoulder before I opened the door. "No accusations," she said. "Ask. Listen. Decide. That's it." I nodded, breath steadying, and climbed the front steps toward the door I'd used 2 mornings earlier like a mailbox. The bell chimed inside, bright and domestic. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Claire stood there, face pale, eyes rimmed red, her mouth a fragile line that bent when she saw me. "Ethan," she whispered. I didn't have a speech prepared. Maybe that was for the best. I lifted my hands in a gesture that meant I'm here, not to win, not to punish, just here. Behind her I could hear voices, Linda's clipped tones, Frank's measured rumble. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and coffee left too long on a burner. "Can we talk?" I asked. She stepped back to let me in, and for the first time all week the fear that had lived in my ribs loosened. We were finally in the same room, facing the thing that had been growing in silence. What came next would not be easy. Nothing about it could be. But I'd made a choice before the door opened, somewhere on the ride over while the water tower shrank in the rearview mirror. The truth mattered more than pride. If we were going to survive, we had to let every piece of it sit on the table where everyone could see. I crossed the threshold and the door closed behind us with a soft click that sounded to me like a beginning. The door clicked shut behind me, and the living room felt charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. Claire's parents sat stiff on the couch, the television muted on a news channel, their faces carved into something between worry and judgment. Claire stood just inside the doorway, her arms folded as though she needed them to hold her together. I tried to breathe evenly. "I didn't come here to fight," I said. My voice cracked, but I steadied it. "I came because I should have asked you directly. Instead, I let fear do the talking." Claire's father, Frank, shifted his weight. "You dropped that envelope like a grenade on our doorstep. Do you understand what that did to her?" I nodded. "I know now, and I'm sorry." Claire's mom, Linda, leaned forward, her voice softer but no less sharp. "You think secrets are easy? You think she wanted to keep you in the dark?" She gestured at her daughter. "She froze because she didn't know how to tell you without losing everything at once." Claire's eyes glistened. "I wasn't ready to hurt you," she whispered. "I didn't know if the test was right. I didn't know if it would ruin us before we even had a chance." I took a step toward her. "Claire, I don't need perfect timing. I just need the truth. All of it. No more shadows." The silence stretched. Finally, she drew in a breath. "It's not yours. It can't be. It's from before the wedding. I thought that part of my life was finished. I thought I was safe. Then the test said otherwise." The words hit like cold water. But beneath the shock, there was no surprise anymore. I had already suspected. I had already known in my bones. "And do you love him still?" I asked quietly. Her head shook hard, quick. "No. That ended. I chose you. I want this marriage. I want us." That's why I couldn't say it right away. I was terrified you'd think I'd been lying all along. Her best friend Jenna, who had slipped inside with me, finally spoke up. "She was going to tell you Monday, after the appointment. She wanted certainty before she shattered both your lives with a maybe, but your envelope got there first." I turned to Claire again. "I don't care what her parents think. I don't care what the town thinks. I care about whether you and I can get through this together with honesty. Do you want that?" Tears streaked down her face, but her nod was fierce. "Yes. I don't want to lose you." Frank rose from the couch, his presence filling the room. "You say you want to stay? Then stay. But if you can't handle what comes, walk away now. Don't make her crawl through broken glass only to leave her bleeding." I straightened, meeting his eyes. "I'm not walking away." The house quieted. The muted television flickered with images of strangers who had no idea our lives were breaking and bending inside 4 walls. I reached for Claire's hand. She hesitated only a second before letting me hold it. We sat together, her hand trembling in mine, and for the first time since the discovery, I felt something stronger than betrayal. Resolve. Monday's appointment would tell us the truth. Whatever it revealed, I would not let her face it alone. Later that night, after her parents retired to their room, Claire and I walked out onto the porch. The neighborhood was hushed, porch lights glowing amber, crickets filling the spaces our words couldn't reach. She leaned against me, fragile but present. "You should hate me," she said softly. "I don't. I replied. "I hate how you were too scared to trust me with the truth. But I don't hate you. I married you because I wanted all the messy parts too. Maybe this is the test of whether we meant those vows." Her shoulders eased against mine. For the first time in days, I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. The road ahead was crooked and rough, but at least now we were walking it side by side. Monday was coming fast, and with it the answer we couldn't avoid. Monday arrived like a drumbeat I couldn't silence. Every tick of the clock on our kitchen wall felt louder than the last. Claire and I had driven back from her parents' house the night before, not in silence exactly, but in something heavier. Words saved for later, hands brushing once or twice on the console between us. The town looked the same as always, kids waiting for the school bus, coffee shop lines spilling out the door, but my world had tilted. That morning I called in a personal day. Claire did the same. We sat across from each other at the small table in our apartment, a half-eaten plate of pancakes between us, neither of us touching them. "I'll go with you," I said finally. She nodded, her eyes fixed on the syrup dripping down the edge of her fork. "Thank you." The clinic was 20 minutes away, a low brick building tucked between a bank and a flower shop. The waiting room was quiet except for the rustle of magazines and the soft shuffle of feet. We filled out forms. Her name looked strange on paper now, paired with mine at the emergency contact line, like something fragile pretending to be permanent. When the nurse called us in, I held her hand. The fluorescent lights hummed. The doctor explained the procedure with a kindness that felt both practiced and real. Then came the test. 10 minutes of waiting stretched like an hour. Claire's thumb traced the lines of my palm, over and over, as if drawing maps back to steadiness. Finally, the doctor returned. Her voice was gentle but clear. "The test is negative. You're not pregnant." Relief and whiplash hit me at once. My chest filled with air I hadn't realized I'd been holding for days. Claire pressed her hands to her face and sobbed. Not just relief, but exhaustion, shame, everything breaking loose at once. I wrapped my arms around her, and for the first time since our wedding, I felt her collapse into me without restraint. When we stepped out into the bright October sun, the world looked different, clearer, but not simpler. That night, we sat on the couch. No television, no distractions. Claire spoke first. "Ethan, I need to tell you the whole story. You deserve that." I nodded, waiting. "I was seeing someone before you," she said. "It ended months before the wedding. He wasn't serious about us, and I knew it wasn't right. But then you came along, and everything felt different. You made me feel safe, steady, real. That's why I said yes. When I took that first test and saw the lines, I panicked. I thought it meant the past had found a way to follow me into our marriage. I didn't want that for us. I didn't want you to see me as broken or dishonest. So I froze. I kept telling myself I'd explain once I knew for sure. I sat with her words, letting them sink into the cracks. She had been reckless, yes, she had been unfair, but she had also been terrified, and I had added fuel to the fire with my envelope. I should have asked you straight out, I admitted. Instead, I tried to control the story by passing it to your parents. That wasn't love, that was fear. She squeezed my hand. We both made mistakes. But forgiveness wasn't the same as forgetting. The doubt still lingered like a shadow on the wall, visible even when the lights were bright. The next weekend, her friend Jenna came by. She dropped a tote bag on the table and fixed me with a look. "So, it's settled? You're staying?" "I am," I said firmly. She exhaled and gave a short nod. "Good, because if you'd walked away now, you'd only prove her worst fear right." Still, there was one thing left undone. The man from her past. The one whose choices had nearly wrecked ours. He hadn't shown his face since, but his presence hung like an unfinished sentence. "Does he know?" I asked Claire one evening. Her expression shifted. "No, and I don't want to see him again. He doesn't deserve space in my life." But I did. I needed closure, and maybe even a touch of revenge. Not the ugly, violent kind, the kind that comes from drawing a clear line between past and present. I found him easily. Small towns keep no secrets. He was at a bar off Main Street on a Friday night, laughing too loudly, acting as though the world owed him admiration. I didn't announce myself with a punch or a shout. I walked straight to his table and waited until he noticed. "Ethan," he said, smirking. "I heard you married Claire." "Yes," I said calmly. "I did, and I want you to hear this once. Whatever you had with her is over. You left her with fears and doubts, and I picked up the pieces. But I won't let you haunt her anymore. She chose me, and I chose her. You don't get to exist in our marriage even in memory." The smirk faltered. Maybe he wanted a fight, but I wasn't offering one. I turned and walked out before he could answer, the cool night air sharper than any punch. When I came home, Claire was waiting on the porch. She looked at me with a question in her eyes, and I shook my head. "It's done. He's not our problem anymore." For the first time in weeks, her smile reached her eyes. She pulled me close, and the porch light glowed above us, steady, unshaken. Revenge hadn't been about hurting him. It had been about protecting her, protecting us, drawing a line in the sand and choosing love over fear. Our marriage wasn't perfect. It never would be. But as the months rolled on, we learned that trust is not something you declare once at an altar. It's something you rebuild, brick by brick, day after day. And sometimes it's forged in the fire of mistakes, tempered into something stronger than either of you believed it could be. I had stumbled into betrayal, anger, suspicion, but I also found the kind of honesty that cuts deep enough to heal. And standing beside Claire, hand in hand on that porch, I realized that revenge wasn't the end of our story. Choosing each other again, that was. And that's how I discovered the truth 1 month into marriage, faced betrayal, and chose to stand my ground. Some people say walking away is the only answer. Others believe forgiveness and rebuilding trust can make a relationship stronger than before. But here's my question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you have stayed and fought for the marriage? Or would you have walked away the moment you found that test? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want more real-life drama and twists like this, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.